Well, first we got speak with John, west side on the stormwater issue, go figure. Skyline. Skyline Tim. Well, we met for lunch, that's what it was about. All right. Ready to roll. Oh, wow. Okay. Good afternoon, welcome to this presidential day, February 19th, Government Operations Committee. We have 3 items on our agenda, so I want to welcome everybody in the room, thank y'all for being here. And thanks, Shanicia, for sending out the meeting minutes last week. I didn't see any error, but we did approval for our January meeting minutes.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
Ah.
All right, our January 22nd meeting minutes are approved. We will start off with, our short-term rental ordinance. Have just a brief discussion on that. That landed in our lap from our, January 7th, voting meeting. And I would like to turn it over to Brian Williams.
Thanks, Chair. I appreciate that. As staff, we've got 5 issues, or I guess 5 checkpoints with regards to this particular topic. Data collection, the case law analysis, brief discussion on what that means in terms of the sunset clause, this notion of a relief valve provision, and then schedule next steps. So that's how we would like to approach it. And I know we have Travis and Doug here on the software side. And Travis, do you mind just giving us a brief update? I know you shared with me some documentation on Friday, but on the data collection,
Yes, sir.
that portion of it.
Yes, sir. Thanks for having me. On the 31st of January, we kicked off the project with Reynoldscape, and they are the vendor that is going to provide us the software to identify the short-term rental addresses in the county and allow us to ensure that short-term rental properties remain in compliance. And so we kicked that off at the end of January. Currently, we are in the requirements gathering phase of the project where we're sending them all of our information along with the ordinance, how that translates into the way the computer's going to have to read it so we can provide reports of compliance versus non-compliance and all the different zones and all the different nuances of the ordinance. By the end of this month, February 29th, that is the day the vendor says the addresses will be available to use. And then we'll begin building the reports to provide all the data.
So March 29th.
February 29th, on the address identification provided to us, and that's the raw list. Then we have to go through and cull the list to find who's in compliance versus not compliant.
Okay. So pretty much today, we're just gonna talk about what we passed last month. And then we're gonna, reconvene this discussion next month after we get more information from this February 29th.
I wanted to ask, you're, started to talk before, I guess, the way that I took in the assignment of the GOC would be that there would be, perhaps some direction that would be offered back to the commission and thereby the planning commission as they take this up.
Yeah, so we're gonna take it up, we're gonna continue with the discussion, but we won't have any direction until next month. So,
And then we call a special call session.
Yeah.
Okay.
To get this thing.
Well, certainly nothing necessarily to do on data. That's just an update and what that looks like. And Doug or Bruce, anything you care to add to that? Anybody else? Yeah. Okay.
I've got Melissa on my speakerphone. She was having trouble getting into the WebEx, so we need a minute to give her a float. Melissa's here. Melissa, can you hear us?
Yeah, I can hear you. Thank you.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, in terms of the case law analysis and perhaps by extension, how that relates to the sunset clause, I think we've got Sherry Austin and John on the line. Who would like to start that conversation?
John.
Hey, good afternoon, everybody.
Afternoon.
So in terms of the case law, I guess the first thing that I would say is that as the members of this committee might remember, we, as an office, sent a pretty lengthy memo to the mayor and all the commissioners concerning certain aspects of the proposed ordinance. One of as I perceive it, at least based upon some of the public comment, one of the big issues is obviously the so-called sunset clause, which means that, as it's presently written in the ordinance, after 2 years, legal nonconforming uses will no longer be able to continue their legal nonconforming use. They'll have to come into compliance. And so, in terms of the analysis on that, if there's something in particular for the members of this committee that you feel like you haven't gotten from us, I would encourage you to email me. I'm happy to compile those questions and see if we can get something to you all in a attorney-client privileged written format that could be, digestible for you all in terms of that. And, I guess at this point, given the information that we've already sent, I think we need a little bit of information about what y'all are looking for in terms of what else you might need from our office on that point.
Could you resend that, email that you sent out on 1/12/24?
Yes, sir, I certainly can.
Just to, make sure it's on the top of our email list.
Absolutely. Happy to do that. And I know there was a follow-up email as well on I think it was on 118. Would you like for me to send that along as well?
Yes, please.
Okay, happy to do that too.
So I think we had a speaker at the last meeting who indicated that they might be interested in litigation. So probably best just to take the attorney's comments under advisement. And then if you have anything that you would like to see in addition to that, you just communicate directly with the attorney's office.
Yes. Any questions?
Nope.
I'm curious to see the data when it comes back in on the 29th, and certainly.
Okay. Commissioner Lane,
Yeah,
any comments?
I don't think so. Want to postpone conversation until we get more information?
Yes.
Yeah, the data gap, the software Travis. I'm sorry, I forgot. Travis. Travis is here to us. He said they would have some numbers for us on the 29th.
Right. Yeah, they'll be raw numbers, so it's just all the things we thought kind of done with operating.
Okay.
And then we'll need to go through and convert that in based on the ordinance to say, these are currently in compliance, not currently in compliance based on the ordinance as it's written today.
And if,
I think it's a little bit of how.
But that final product may not be on the 29th. The 29th is when we get the raw information.
so yeah, next question, how long do you anticipate? Couple of weeks?
Couple of weeks at the most. We're kind of working through a lot of the configuration of that. So as we're providing them with what we think we might need, we're making sure that we have the data from this whole report. So we're hoping to have that pretty soon after the 29th, but I'll give you an update on the 29th either way.
Just for your information, Carrie, certainly if during the month of March, we need to meet more than once to get this moving through government ops and through, yes, to go back to planning commission as well. Yes, and back to the mayor commission. Just to maintain that schedule. I think we had spoken about it at the voting session.
Yeah, and there's two other points on this topic, and one of those would be scheduled next steps, so we can talk about that in just a second.
Go ahead.
But the relief valve provision, if we talk a little bit about that idea and what that means and get a sense of where y'all might want to go with that. And between Bruce and the attorney's office, I'm not sure who will introduce that.
On the relief valve?
Yes.
I think John wanted to start.
Okay, John.
Sure, and I can describe that a little bit. So as the members of this committee know, there has been some discussion of a so-called relief valve. And, you know, what that is in essence is an opportunity for people who have a short-term rental who feel like the sunset provision of the ordinance does not provide them a full opportunity to recoup the investment that they made in their short-term rental. It gives them an administrative means to basically, for lack of a better term, seek an extension. It gives them an opportunity to recoup their investment. There are, you know, several ways I suppose that this could be written, and you know, we can talk about that a little bit more if that's something that this body would like to explore. There are a few things that I think y'all should be aware of as it pertains to a relief valve. And the first thing is that, you know, it will take a little time to put that language together. This is a somewhat novel concept, particularly in Georgia. So we'd want to make sure that we have very good standards for staff, and if it went to an administrative hearing, for an administrative hearing officer to comply with, and to apply to the set of circumstances that's presented to them. And so, you know, we need a little bit of time to make sure that we're getting that right if we were to go down that road. The second thing that I would mention is just in terms of logistics and administration. Obviously, having this type of provision adds some complexity. It adds some impact on staff. If there are opportunities for administrative hearings related to requests for relief, that can certainly take time from attorneys in our office, from staff, from other people, and certainly it'll take some resources to make sure we're doing those correctly. And of course, I you know, coming from the attorney's office, I'm not an operational person, and I'd encourage anybody who may be on that front to add their 2 cents as well. But that's kind of the basic premise of a relief valve, and some of the things that we might encounter if we explore that path.
So, a relief valve is essentially a due process or administrative hearing for individuals, right?
Yes, sir, that's correct. So it's an opportunity for somebody to come to in some forum and be able to say, look, you know, this under the 2-year sunset provision, I won't be able to recoup my investment. You know, we'd have to determine how they would show that, prove that, those sorts of things. And it would provide them means of due process to be able to seek an extension or some sort of relief from a 2-year sunset clause.
Okay. And part of the due process, we would be looking at more staffing and recoup cost, like the county would be paying for potential costs.
Well, and if I could, John, I guess on the operational side, or go ahead and answer, please, and I can fill in after that.
Sure. So the premise of the basically the premise would be that the short-term rental operator or owner would be able to seek relief, and we'd have to look at the best way to start that, whether it be started with a staff administrative process that the person could then appeal to a hearing officer, or whether it would go immediately to a hearing officer. Those are 2 means that you could explore for a relief valve. But the basic premise would be that there would be an opportunity to have a hearing at some point if that person felt like they needed it. And so that, you know, again, I think Blaine may address this a little bit, but you know, that will impact us a little bit from a resource perspective. And I hope I answered the question. If I didn't answer the question exactly right, please let me know.
Well, and please check me if I'm wrong, but at a conceptual level, a relief valve could be advantageous in that you can't legislate every eventuality that affords somebody the ability to work through a process. On the other hand, what you might end up with if you pursue something like that with some folks that are having to adhere to the 2 year and some who have gotten an administratively approved extension, and neighbors may or may not understand that. And we haven't even talked about, well, how much of an extension is in order depending on what situation. So I can't say what the ultimate timeline would be. But it could be problematic and a bit controversial too.
Right. What's the next?
And I guess John says this too. I think, if you had an, if you will, an acceptable period of time in which to try to recoup your costs, and perhaps you don't need a relief valve, but it's good to have potential avenues for people that are seeking relief, because if they don't get the relief they want, it could end up in court. So I think that was the whole point, John, trying to find a middle ground process in case this is what we end up committing to, if that's fair.
That's a very fair characterization, Blaine. I mean, if you have a sunset provision and you have an industry that has a lot of variability in it in terms of how much a person or a business entity might have invested to be able to operate a certain use, the relief valve gives an opportunity for people, because of that variability, to be able to seek an extension or seek some relief and be able to make sure they're recouping their investment. And so that's the premise of it.
And said another way, I guess, depending on how short that window is for the sunset, the more relevant I think this process becomes.
Okay.
Or maybe another way of
Yes.
saying it, the longer the sunset provision, the less relevant perhaps it becomes. But no absolutes here, it's just a concept. The only other thing I'd mention on the operational side, and certainly Bruce, please feel free to jump in. Whatever's happening at the counter, so to speak, at the planning department, of course, we would need some criteria. Staff doesn't relish getting out there and coming up with a different answer than what the legislation intended. But obviously we'll serve in that capacity, but that could prove to create some difficult situations like this. But
Yeah, the more we can have the rules of engagement taken down, the better. It's like a straight answer, and it helps staff. It puts us on better legal ground, which helps John and the rest of the staff kind of breathe easier when the challenges come. So time spent on the front end is important. I guess is a good way to say it.
That's right. And the only thing I'd mention too about that is I would expect that if there were some relief valve provision, that you could expect most of the persons who want to seek relief doing it toward the end of the sunset period. And so there could be a little bit of mad dash may be the wrong term, but you would probably see a significant uptick in people trying to seek relief under a relief valve provision toward the end of the sunset period. And so that would, could certainly implicate having a lot to do at once on processing those types of applications.
Okay, today I recommend that we don't take any action on short-term rental discussion. We'll just wait till we get the February 29th response. And at our proposed next meeting, we just have a straight meeting just on short-term rentals, possibly. Because as this is more unraveling, as this will come to you, it unravels even more. So I recommend that we pass today with no action.
We're gonna have to vote.
Yeah, no vote. We did at our next meeting. We did have straightforward, only talk about SDRs.
And that's good. I think what Bruce is saying to clarify some of the stuff that's in the ordinance for those that do have a lot of questions and see what needs to be tweaked or not to help y'all understand what they're.
well, we have kind of a tentative schedule, next steps. Bruce can share verbally.
So with this being committee now, we're going to talk about it in March. We thought April would be potentially the earliest that the Mayor and Commission as a whole would be hearing feedback or direction from the GOC. But it's possible that coming out of the March meeting, might want to discuss further. And Commissioner Handy, you were talking about perhaps the option of having some other special calls to discuss things.
Right.
That could fall, I guess, at committee level, but it might fall with the commission as a whole. I'm not sure.
But what I'm hearing is y'all want to have a placeholder in the April voting meeting to possibly consider having the commission vote on whatever y'all recommend, but you won't know that until mid-March. It's 2 weeks after the 29th receipt of information. We can call another meeting and try to bring it up.
Two or so meetings.
Yeah.
Yeah. So anything to help us get it to sometime in March to vote.
So that April,
Yeah.
yeah, that April moment would then need to provide direction to staff to bring to the planning commission to bring through that process for text amendments. To ultimately have a vote on substance of text
I
amendment.
would shoot for May for the planning commission is what I would shoot for. Doesn't that make sense?
And for it to go to them,
If it goes to plan, for it to go to the planning commission.
but y'all will vote in April, hopefully.
Right.
Yes, sir. We're on the same page.
And then it comes back to us and.
It would be in June on that side.
Right.
All right,
That's what we have on that.
thank you. Oh, go ahead, Commissioner Lee.
Oh, I shouldn't say anything.
Okay. I do want to say, that, Josh is on vacation this week, that's why we have, one this case.
That's why you're having so.
Yeah. All right, moving on to, the next is disparity study.
Yes, so we've got a presentation for you today and with the recommendations and explain where we are. And we've got David Ford here and Dr. Randy Epps with us as well.
Well, we've been through the presentation, so Josh, if we need to go through it again, we can, or this is a discussion period for y'all, or what do y'all want?
What do y'all recommend?
So, say that still model, she will know the, so the aspirational model is, it's using the aspirational goal.
The actual model uses the race and gender conscious narrow tailored policy.
Is that what y'all recommending the Asheville one?
We're not recommending either one. What we're doing is we're saying, is this what you were looking for? Is the small business enterprise what you were looking for, or both? If you want both, then we're gonna have to understand that we're gonna need more staffing down the road, because that's a lot to do.
Right.
Well, and if I could, thank you, David. I wasn't here, but I did get caught up. So I think Commissioner Link had talked about preferential policy for local businesses perhaps in the last meeting. And so that is something that can be done. And I think Savannah does it too, but that is really different from what we're talking about here. And what I would tell you is that if we could, let's stick with the disparity study with the race and gender approach and hold off on a small local preference and do that in the near future. Let us get this one started, and then, because it is more work and more staffing. We haven't even talked about that model, but it is possible to do that, obviously.
I think that makes sense. I mean, I guess, I'm sorry to interrupt, but, because I think I do need some time to figure out what it would, what the staffing levels would be, but I think it's important to do that. Because I remember the discussion about even doing the disparity study. That was one of the reasons we had done that, because don't you have to do the study in order to just do the preferential?
Yeah.
Certainly when it comes to protected classes.
But the local is what.
So I was actually just texting with John, excuse me. I think we should get back to you on that. I think there's some potential concerns about just doing a local business preference. And I just prefer not to speak to that here without having a chance to talk to John about that more.
Well, maybe we could make a motion to move forward with the first one, Blaine. What was the one? Nothing.
Well, this is what we're presenting, and so that would be, and I guess the proposed policy, I think you can find summarized on page 7 of your handout.
Yeah, just the policy that we gave y'all, it's the, business inclusion policy.
Right. So in keeping with, just to summarize, and David, please fill in any holes here. So the consultant gave us a couple of different avenues we could go down. But much to your point, Commissioner Handy, the study was required to see if there had been historical reason to do so. And that was done, and it was found that there is. And so you can go 2 different directions. In this one, we did not want to ignore the aspirational goals that were posed or recommended by the consultant that reflected the deficiencies from the past. And so what we would like to do is there were 5 aspirational goals, okay? Construction and architecture and engineering was one of them. And then there were some other ones. The largest deficiencies, if you will, appear to have occurred under construction and architecture and engineering. And by far, I think most of our big spend items are related to that. So what we're telling you is we want to get into this space, we want to do it well. So of the 5, let's start with 2 and let us hammer those really good. That's where a lot of our money goes out. Get that under our belt. And, require that contractors demonstrate good faith efforts in order to get those MWBE subcontractors into their projects. And this approach doesn't include training and workshops. So it's moving where you want to go. That first step, we make the biggest step as far as the amount of spend, and allow our staff to figure out what this means. Because y'all, I want to remind you too, the study area is not just Athens-Clarke County. It's a 31 county area that goes to the north of Atlanta. And we've got one position. We've got economic development. We've been talking with their staff about how they can help us market, closer to home. And certainly the inclusion office is a big source of support here. But we want to make sure that we execute well. And so this is what we're suggesting to move forward with. Get it on the books. Let us start working in certain areas that are important. And then let's see how it goes and layer in the other ones.
So you're asking us to have a motion that steps the proposed business inclusion policy.
Yes, sir.
And then with future considerations, we'll work towards the other.
Yes, we'll be coming back to you, with how we're doing in the future, and we could revisit adding in the other aspirational goals at a later date.
Okay, I'll make that motion.
There's one other thing I want to include. We've been looking at tools that would help us do this.
Sure.
Okay, because there's a lot of identification, tracking that needs to occur. Problem is, Munis is very limited in this area. So it's also very limited in its approach to the public interface. So in other words, people, vendors signing up, providing information on if they're already certified in one area or another. It's kind of difficult to do that through Munis. So staff has explored other opportunities for that. And, just one of these, this is opening up, it's a big company. I haven't even talked to Blaine about this, but he can get mad at me probably. So we're not asking you to vote on this or to ratify this, but where I have the yellow tab, this just tells you some of the data that we would be able to get on a software like this. And you would be able to readily tell us at any given time how well we're doing in spend, how well we're doing with solicitations and so forth with minorities, women-owned businesses, or any other groups identified here. And one of the things that we would probably come to the commission about would be to, I think, got pricing the other day, but the first year pricing on this is kind of expensive because of setup. But if you're talking year over year, we probably get 3 years paid under ARPA. And we still have a little bit of money for somebody on my staff left in the budget for the study. And so we would like for the commission to be open to funding this, software for 3 years. Probably a total of about 8,000 or something like that to do that.
So Munis don't have the capacity of getting the data that this dashboard and this tool has, right?
It doesn't have interface capability. The problem with Munis is it's a great database, it's a very stable database, but it is not the data that comes out of it, being able to, like vendors should go on this and easily register. And it would make it a whole lot easier for our community business procurement coordinator to assist people that are trying to certify as a minority business enterprise or women business enterprise or any other VA, whatever it may be, because they give you a lot of options on them. And so this just gives us a much better reporting capability than what we had years ago when we had that other program. And, we can get this reporting at any time, although the policy calls for once a year full reporting to the commission. So, we're not asking you to make a decision on this today, but we just want to offer this up as something we're looking at, and if we can get ARPA paid for it for very little money, for 2 or 3 years, that would be fantastic.
This is awesome. I'm happy to look forward. It's just this part of the tool that's gonna help us,
Yes.
for the ABE program, for the disparity study, let's look forward on it.
And basically, if we were to go along with this, because only 25%, are African American to make up our business, our minority business, will they not be ran over or not even considered because there's such a small amount of Black-owned businesses? I guess what I'm asking is, will we be right back at this point? Because it's such a low number of African American businesses, and what we're trying to do is make sure they're accounted for. Like, I think that this is a good idea to see what we're actually working with. But how do we make sure that 25% has some sort of opportunity?
Population maybe 25% minority, but the number of businesses owned in Clarke County is not 25%.
It's less.
Oh, it's much less.
And, okay, so I guess that's not,
Yeah.
how do we keep them from, how do we include them because they're so small and they don't get ran over by bigger contractors or with more experience, or not necessarily more experience, but more opportunities than say our contractors here in Clarke County?
There's really two answers to what you're asking. Number one is if we can identify vendors that meet these criteria that are in the local area, then when we do business, that the policy doesn't cover business below $50,000. So we just get 3 quotes. But once we can identify all the vendors in our database that meet these criteria, if someone needs to go out for a quote, and there's a minority or business enterprise in here that has that code, we go out, we would ask that they be included in the quote. Just that's the way we see getting more participation. Because right now, if it's 20,000, 50,000, you have to get 3 quotes. You probably get 3 same quotes over and over. So you get comfortable, because people do a good job and will stick with that. So this would be a way we could ask people to go ahead and include someone who meets one of these criteria in the quote if they don't have one already.
So David, I think it's fair to say, this will make sure that those smaller folks have a fair shot at being considered. And then over time, if they're awarded contracts, then ostensibly they're going to build capacity to be able to compete in the future. So we're trying to rectify, years of imbalance, and it won't get rectified in the first few years, but we're putting some tools and processes in place that will hopefully level the playing field for the future and allow those businesses to grow.
But I do want to be clear that if you go back and look, think it's the, first page. Presentation. When we went back and we looked at what the program was before, it ended in June 2011. You know, they, this is before we go, what spent, what dollars we go. Down at the bottom, it said that fiscal year 10, which was the year of this report, there was only 1% MBE spend in that period of time, but that dropped from 8% in fiscal year 01, 2% fiscal year 02, due to the closure of one MBE venue. So they were meeting a lot of their participatory goals, as well as increasing their spend goals at that time through that one vendor. When that vendor closed, that ended that. And I think it, you know, up here says one of their goals was to have 10% of the vendor database to be MBE vendors. Well, in fiscal year 10 report, it's 1%. So, you know, I don't know what the number that, I mean, that's the whole thing, going into an unknown, because locally, we can look on the commercial procurement registry. We can tell you how many vendors per category are in each type of business by code. We can, you know, what the disparity study did was they looked at the 31 county area where the majority of our spend occurred, and they said, okay, well, here's your 5 industries. And then they went out and pulled information from Dun and Bradstreet to find out how many vendors met those codes. And that's where they came up with those aspirational goals. So that's why under the policy that we have, you know, when we talk about construction contracts above that limit, and we have that aspirational goal, you know, there's going to be work, there's going to be a lot of work done to make sure that these big contractors that can actually bid on it are actually making a good faith effort to bring in minority and women business enterprises as subcontractors on that project. So that's really where the participation comes. So like, if you look at the state of Georgia, for instance, they do a lot of construction, especially on roadways and stuff, infrastructure. They're getting that money partially from the federal government. Federal DOT has all these disadvantaged business enterprise requirements. So the state of Georgia actually, I think last year passed a law that said that if you are successful in meeting your subcontracting goals, in other words, you're hiring these disadvantaged business enterprises, we'll give you an income tax credit on your business up to $100,000 you spend on these vendors. And we can't do that if we don't do income tax. But probably, I really think it's going to be a lot of work because probably a lot of these minority and women business enterprises that are out there in that 31 county area, probably a lot of them don't even come from that area. They're bigger enterprises that they swoop in on these contracts to me because they know these contractors that have business inclusion offices themselves to meet these goals of the federal government. They're going to be swooping up a lot of these. So it's going to be a lot of work for us to try to bring any of these in. That's where the bulk of our spend is, big dollars. Small dollars is just simply finding out who we have and then trying to make sure that these people get included in the quotes. And there's other things that we can do down the road too as we get into this and get our database built up, get software that works. You know, we could come back to you with policy requirements for unbundling contracts and things like that, so that it makes it easier for small participants to, you know, bid on parts of the contract. And all that's recommended in the sphere. So it's gonna be a process for us to even get there.
I think that unbundling would be key.
Yeah.
I think it, other than that.
Go ahead, Chair.
Dr. Alex, any comments, suggestions?
I'm right on board with whichever direction, you know, this goes. I think it comes down to, education and awareness of this. We're here to help. The inclusion office is here to help. That engagement piece of understanding what is even out there is something that the inclusion office has already started doing. That just has not been publicized yet, but we are doing some of the legwork there. But I think what it really boils down to is that, education and awareness piece, which is gonna be critical in this to help get out, that information, one, to those organizations and areas that are already at stall, and not being able to get, or prevent them from getting missed in the bulk of everything. So I think that comes down to a lot of that educational piece, which we're willing to help with anywhere that goes.
And also, Mr. Boyd, one more question. In the disparity study, there, the Jacobs Management, group, that there were 6 positions for staff. Do you know, or I guess it's for like, have we filled or even have a job description for those 6 staff members that could possibly help with moving forward for the enterprise section? With that, am I correct by saying that?
So, I know that continues being asked, and I'm gonna share all of that with you. So at the time that the commission was in this very body talking about what do we need to do in order to move this forward, and the attorneys were advising, well, you need to do an analysis. This was right at the time that we were negotiating the Jacobs contract that had gone through procurement for the SPOS services. And this was just a section in their contract in case we wanted to use them. And it was written, and you'll see the language, to be fairly flexible, which was great for us in the long term. So y'all ended up choosing MGT to do the analysis, so we don't need Jacobs to do that. There is nothing that was contemplated in the current Jacobs contract that would add new positions for the disparity study. They did have to flex up some, if I remember correctly, to handle the new work. But where they have been useful and where we think, this is where we're feeling really confident, because I know staff was concerned about trying to start the program and then immediately start on aspirational goals. And I've tried to assuage their concerns by saying, well, with our construction spend and with our architecture and engineering spend, most of that happens through our SPOS programs, which Jacobs helps with. And so they have the knowledge and expertise to help us implement this program by talking, we don't know exactly what role that'll take. And that's where we're going to get down to brass tacks once y'all approve the policy. So as recently as, a year ago, they didn't really have any standing implementing this policy, but with this move towards going ahead and picking up these initial aspirational goals, they can assist, but the main support of the program will come through the finance department and with support by the Inclusion Office and Economic Development and Jacobs. I'll answer your question.
And we have filled the community business procurement coordinator, that's Samantha Murray here. And she has completed a work plan. So we'll be discussing that among ourselves this week to see how we want to proceed with this. It's based on a lot of the job description, what's in the job description. It does include working with the inclusion office. It does include reaching out to all these local interest groups, and economic development. So it's going to be very involved with the community and other departments within the government.
And Commissioner Taylor, so we had a meeting in this room with their national head of diversity and her staff, and they had some great insights for us. We kind of ran the policy by and said, what do you think about that? And I think that they could also possibly help us with some vendor lists in this 31 county area, but we haven't gone a long ways down that road. So they're a helpful resource, but they won't be responsible for implementing the plan. And if I could, I'd recommend on the motion, just to kind of wrap up the software end of things, if y'all could add that the GOC supports the acquisition of software to help implement it, then when we bring it to the commission, we can be more specific about those costs and how we pay for it.
Make a motion to that effect.
I second it.
All in favor, say aye.
All right. Now our last one is dirt road policy. Today, we're prepared to talk about.
Connie's gonna be quick, right?
Yes, go ahead, Roger.
Give us a high level overview of how we got here and the carry policy.
All right, so high level is the program, as we know it, as retired since 2002. The last known agenda approved staff to pursue right-of-way acquisition and building a road, and the residents, not all, we did not get right-of-way from all of them. The program said we need 100% right-of-way donation. And the program stalled at that point, and then later on was never funded in any way, like from general capital or expense. So what happened recently is in the last agenda and budget approval, Mayor and Commissions chose to add $200,000 into the TPW general capital budget to fund their road paving. There was no direction of what policy to follow. The policy, like we said, it's not really a policy. It was more like a program with standard operating procedures associated with it and tied back then to the existing technical standards. I can go over the slides with a little bit more details. That's what I was planning on doing, but I did give you kind of brief, quick kind of synopsis of what the presentation is.
So what do you want us to do?
So what I'd like to present to you today, what do we have? First, maybe the challenges that the program faced back then, because these will be the same challenges and maybe a little bit magnified with today's standards. We'll go to the next slide. This one here would be good. So currently, what Steph has been hearing about is from residents and our elected officials with work requests and inquire about roads. We have 5 roads that we're aware of where people have asked for them to be paved, or we have reported several maintenance requests over the years. Where we are today in terms of the challenges that we are to establish a new dirt road program is that we will require 60 feet of right of way with 20 feet paved roadway. And it all depends on the type of traffic. So 20 feet for local, if it's not a local or a local collector, then it's going to have to be higher than that. Or if it's on a curb, we'll have to also consider more paving way.
Where does the 60 feet come from?
It's our minimum standards.
That we could, so for some of these roads, like Beach Creek Drive, 60 feet is to their front porch.
Sure, and again, we can start with 60 and see what we need to do. If that is the road we are looking at, so it wasn't that in a priority. We're not trying to go right after all these roads in the order that I mentioned. We just list them.
60 feet can be adjusted.
Yes, sir. So 60 we say minimum, and we'll work with that. And if it's really prohibitive, then we'll look for other options.
Hey, Ronnie, I think, what are some of the reasons why 60 would be the minimum enough?
It's our minimum for rural roadway section, and usually it's for the utilities and also the ditches.
Drainage.
Yes, drainage. Usually there's ditches, there's no curb and gutter there. And again, and also for utilities, it's our minimum. We can consider 50, we have accepted 50 in the past. But again, we can establish 50.
I just said 50 techniques,
yes.
but if it is like that particular road where it's, houses are built real close to it, then if we were to pass it this way, and it started impacting homes and they wouldn't be eligible perhaps,
That is correct. So it's, all this is a kind of draft, high level constraints that we work with. And again, to your point, Commissioner, 50 may work, then we'll go with 50. We do also recognize that a lot of these roads that we're familiar with do have topographic challenges and existing drainage challenges that will have to be a part of the project. We do have limited funding. We only got $200,000 in FY24, and without policy or rank program, we did not ask for additional funding this year, but it all depends on the policy and how we go from today. That may change. It's up for our elected officials' deliberation and discretion to add more funding to the program. I'd like to mention that usually those dirt roads used to cost not much money. Today, it's much higher than we used to see. So we expect between 1.5 million to 3.5 million per mile. And the cost difference is really that topography, drainage, and how it ties into driveways and how many driveways, any utilities that need to be updated. For example, if there's 2-inch water main or 6-inch water main, so we may want to upgrade the water main before we go in there. So I'm including that cost in this kind of cost per mile in here. There might be a retaining wall, there might be driveway challenges where we have to take out the whole driveway to tie back into the house. So it's not steep. Also, we want to address in any future policies, sidewalks, and walkable grass shoulders. So we don't want to just show up, pave the road and leave. Because we would leave shoulders that they are non-walkable, we're forcing people to walk into the street. And for today's standards, ADA standards, it is not a typical process anymore. We should not be doing that. I don't know if it's against the law right now, but I would leave it to an ADA specialist to give us their kind of weigh in, because the program has seen an update recently.
But so not necessarily sidewalks at minimum, but grading so that people could transit it out of the travel lanes. Yes.
Yes, they could walkable shoulder.
Yes.
We'll go to the next slide.
Melissa, I'm priority, if the trips per day would be prioritized, like some of these roads might just access a handful of residences, but some of them are actual parts of real roads that access entire neighborhoods, or at least one of them is.
Yes, Commissioner, it is captured in a different way. We're looking at maintenance. So with dirt roads, the maintenance per year is a lot higher for roads with high traffic and heavy traffic. So that is captured as part of the criteria proposed. I think 25% of the full weight, 100 tons. In the next slides, we'll see that if you're watching the screen.
Okay, yeah, I'm looking at the presentation from my folder, I don't know.
Yes, ma'am. We're looking at the dirt road list map. So we do have a total 20, did I answer your question, Commissioner?
I think so, yeah. Maintenance accounts for that, those kind of trips per day, I that makes sense.
Thank you. So we do have a total of 25 dirt roads. Don't be confused if you see the list that's at 27, because some roads have 2 segments and we're looking at each segment. So it's more like a road with 2 lines there. They range between 2 to 0.2 to 0.34 miles. So the remaining roads are really short. There are not many long roads.
Well, if I can, just so it's hard to sometimes take ourselves out of Athens-Clarke County, but this is really an amazing statistic in general.
It's not that hard.
That we only have 3 miles of dirt roads.
Some of these folks may want to keep it before they have it.
Yeah.
I mean, or-
That's part of this too. But it's amazing because there's other counties, one I managed before, it's like, it is a huge issue. And certainly in South Georgia, there's lots of dirt roads. The fact that we're down to 3 is pretty amazing.
So those 3 miles is 13.
Yes, sir. They are small, right? So it's not one road. There's mobilization costs, there's traffic control costs, and especially, I mean, that alone adds up to that cost because they are standalone projects.
But the drainage is going to be a big deal.
Of course, the drainage, most of them drainage and driveways, that will have to redo driveways. So the shorter and more condensed or dense neighborhood, the higher the cost is.
So I think Commissioner Fisher brought this up. So,
And Commissioner Culpepper too.
and Culpepper. So what guidance do you
And
need?
Commissioner Hamby.
And,
What used to be his district.
and I thought the 200,000 was going to Alabama.
Yeah, that's a different.
Okay, but, so what guidance do you want us to have with creating a policy?
So we do have $200,000. We have 25 dirt roads. Staff don't want to just give you, Mayor and Commission, an agenda item with recommended road to be paid. We wanted to establish a policy, and also we've heard from residents, at least from one street, dirt road, that they have an appetite to champion the fund to a certain level and how to do that. Is there a policy? So we felt like if this is something that all elected officials would like to pursue in future funding and budgets, this is up to them to give us that direction and prioritize this from their perspective and their constituents. Also to establish some basic expectations from a policy perspective. So if a group of residents come up to the department and say, hey, we live here, this road has been a dirt road for a long time, we would like to pave it. What's the process? So we don't start from scratch, we do have a policy, and this would mirror our self-funded sidewalk policy that we already have. So we're considering writing a policy to do what we can do with any program funding, SPLOST or general capital. You know, there's no funding and the road does not fall within the top priority, then the residents have the option of self-funding a dirt road program.
And we've got some criteria we'd like to go over with you today.
And I got those in the next 2 slides.
Okay.
All right, so staff are recommending 4 different criteria. The first one is right of way. If we have 50 feet or more, then we'll give 25 points to that road. Topographic and stormwater challenges. So the steeper, the more challenging, the less points you get, meaning the project become less feasible, especially with limited funding. Need for turnaround. Dead end roads end up to be the most expensive ones. Turnarounds are expensive, and they are a safety issue. We realize a lot of roads in Athens-Clarke County do not have a full turnaround, does not allow for school buses or emergency vehicles to turn around, and it's dangerous. And luckily, we haven't had any major incidents, but around the country, I've heard one story where a trash truck backed into an old person walking in the street. We don't want that to happen, especially if we build something today.
I guess I would say that, you know, should we be, that's gonna happen on the dirt road too, right? If there's no turnaround, then the danger is also there, so we should be trying to do what we can.
I would, you know, the industry standard, and I say what's the standard, if we touch it, we fix it. That's the whole thing. If we touch it, we know there's a problem, we'll fix it. We have a lot of substandard roads, and they're not dirt.
So if they're Robert Shoals, it's a private road. And that's been part of the issues, is trying to get a hammerhead at the end for the fire trucks to get in and out of.
I guess I'm saying that some of these roads that we have touched, in like the Beach Creek, and we put some gravel down for them from time to time.
It depends on the budget. And I'm not a lawyer, this becomes more of, if there is a lawsuit, right? And then the defense would be, well, this was our budget. We have, and this is not.
Well, stand that to the rational criteria. So this would be a great T-Splosh project, and then we can say that we're the only,
Yeah.
one of the few counties in Georgia that doesn't have any more dirt roads that are public.
And I'm not arguing against it. Sure. All I'm saying is, with a dirt road that we've touched, it's still not a safe issue. You see where I'm going with that? So,
Yes, I'm ready.
And another criteria, so number of visits to perform maintenance, what
Yes.
about considering the amount of traffic on the home?
Very good, and we feel like if we're gonna add another, the number of traffic, that's gonna double the points, because it's already counted under the number of visits. The number of visits is really, that's what counts to economics. Why are we paving dirt roads if people are not asking us to pave them just because of convenience and they don't like their road, they want it to be paved? That's not the only reason we want to decide on those. I would feel from a staff perspective, from resources. It's also based on funding. It's also based on how much per year it's costing us to maintain those roads. So if it's not economically a good idea to pave a road, we'll leave it as a dirt road. If there's only few vehicles, and again, back to the number of vehicles a year passing this road, that doesn't require a lot of maintenance. But if the road sits on a very steep topography, has high number of traffic, that becomes more of a priority to us. What discourages us from doing it is funding. Now, if this becomes a very good funded project, we may visit that criteria and say, you know what, we're no longer going to look at topography and stormwater, because they all need to be addressed. And we'll focus on the number of vehicles and the right of way. and consent. And that's the two.
Okay, so Kim, go ahead.
Issue, we might have some of these dirt roads that are, I think zoning should be taken into account. You might have a dirt road for an area that goes for, fairly high density and employment. Whereas you have another road that's in the AR zone that has no potential for increased density. I kind of think that should be taken into account as far as potential future development of the area.
So in that case, Commissioner Link, it's a point system, so you're saying more intensive uses should garner more points?
Yeah, traffic and zoning are, intricately linked. So if you have a dirt road going through an area that's zoned, RM or employment, and we leave it alone, but someone goes ahead and develops there, all of a sudden you have a, sharp uptick in traffic on a road that, could take years to get paved, and in the meantime, if that's the situation that happens with Marlene, we have RM zoning and I think industrial employment zoning, and we have 100-foot stretch of this road that hasn't been paved. And that, in the meantime, the whole neighborhood is, off of that road. And increased business too. The industrial area has got some new businesses. So, I kind of feel like the potential future development should be one of those weighted categories.
Well, we could look at zoning or what are your thoughts on it?
We can look into zoning. I still feel like it's more of a number of visits and more of an ADT, average daily traffic. I like zoning, but given the length of each of those roadways and their location, I tell you, most of them are in residential areas. Britzmar Lane is the
All the one state holdout that is an employment and RS zone.
Yes, now the number of visits, that's where we get to face the reality with those dirt roads. I feel it's covered under the number of visits, but we can sure consider looking at zoning and giving it an equal weight, and then the weight would go 20% for each. We can go that route as well. This is for your discussion, for our discussion here, so this is not like a fixed criteria.
Department, when it comes to the future development now, because if we do have dirt roads going through areas that are zoned for much more intensive use, we might run and ask the question for some reason to keep them zoned for that use.
Okay, so your comments are duly noted. My question is, so once we pay the road, so you won't need an annual budget. Because once we fix the problems, it's done. So I'm just, let's get it done. If it's feasible over the next 3 years or 4 years or however, let's pay these roads, so we always down with the majority if we know how to pay roads. But also, so you're saying that you're gonna come back with us with a policy with the weighted concern or weighted criteria, excuse me.
Yes, if you're okay with this criteria, these list of criteria, we can come back with a list of roads based on the criteria you see. If you like to add the zoning, I can add another one, give it another 20%, work with the planning department, come back with staff recommended criteria.
Can we do this? Can we just go ahead and send it to the mayor and commission? Or it doesn't need to come back here.
Need more research, more.
I do need to write a policy, and it will take maybe 2 months from today to present like a draft of the policy. I just have a few things going on right now, so maybe 2 months will happen. It will be a good time for us to present a draft policy. If you want us to take it to mayor and commission directly, we'll be more than happy to do that.
Oh, you could make a motion if you like the components of it to send a policy based on these components to the commission at the first available opportunity.
Can I say, I do like the components, but I guess I would look for something when it comes to the mayor commission, that doesn't necessarily, that takes into account the dynamics of the different streets. So certainly, you're gonna take a lot of them out when you start talking about the right of way or even stormwater channel. I mean, so I think it's a case by case basis, really, but a policy that can address a case by case basis.
Well, we could do it one of two ways. We can come back to you with a policy and based on those criteria that we talked about today with the addition of zoning, we can give you a proposed list in order of priority.
Correct, and we will present to you all 25 roads. Right. So they're all included. And the right of way has been the challenge, getting donated right of way. So we still recommend that for this program to be successful and to mirror many other programs in the state of Georgia, right of way has to be donated. Don't donate the right of way, we cannot pay this road. Now, it's up to your the mayor commission to approve a policy like this or have a different provision in it about the right of way.
Just what I'm saying about the right of way, I understand some streets, it's B Street, doesn't have a lot of right of way to give up.
Sure.
But I want that to preclude them from being able to have some.
The same way about Head Street. Are you familiar with?
Yes, it's a part of, yes.
It's
To some degree, not really with the road itself, but it's on the list.
it's, when it rains, it's like a big mud puddle and no one can get out or in. And so I really want to make sure Head Street is on that list when it comes to, and I don't think that they'll have an issue with the donation of the right of way. From my understanding, the entire, street, which is probably not even a mile, are all in agreement with, I learned that earlier and I, told them that, once it's paid, then it's kind of is that true? That once it's paid, it's a Clarke County street?
It is a Clarke County street up to where it's maintained. This one is kind of funny. It's a good example of an open right of way, some of it has trees in it and it's a continuation of other people's yards. And the other part of the street, it's just one block, half of it is dirt. The other one is trees and grass and yards. And so, yeah, the open side of it with a dirt or ground, we maintain that up to the mailboxes.
Okay.
There, so.
And I don't think that I've spoken to the spokesperson of the street and they're fine with it. They just wanted them to, whatever I can do to be of assistance to.
Or, yeah, sure. No, I appreciate that feedback. It's very important. I don't think we've heard from constituents there, but it would be great to hear from them. And now that you mentioned it, I would say, oh, now I know.
There you go.
I haven't heard that people wanted to pay it, but not now I know.
Yeah. Thank you.
Just make a motion, just to put, or I don't even know if we need a motion, just kind of wait till us in 2 months and show us what you got and then we'll pass it on from there.
Okay.
Yeah, that sounds good. And if I could just sorry,
That's it.
well, on the discussion piece, Jen got a second, yes. I'm late.
How about, did I need to make a motion to bring?
Oh, you don't? Okay. So, what I would offer is just for folks that are watching, it is $13 million and I like your idea of knocking it out. That would be awesome. But without T-Splosh, then what you're looking at over 5 years, if you try to accomplish it in 5 years, it's about $2.5 million for general fund. And that's going to be difficult to do with the life cycle issues that we're dealing with. So the criteria will be helpful in the short term. Let us know how to spend the first $200,000 of any money you may add to it in the next few years. But I would really think that this would be an awesome T-Splosh project in the next cycle.
And also, can you come back with an additional budget to finish the other roads after the $200,000 spent, like, what?
Maybe the top 5 with that.
It's because what that is going to require staff to go out and do a cost estimate on all those 25. And that's going to be a lot of time. And if we're not going to do them in the near term, so your answer is let's rank them. And then those that look like they're most eligible, we can do some cost, order magnitude cost.
Yes. Top 5 roads.
But it's $200,000 spent, it's still gonna be a road.
I don't think the 200,000 is going to get us anything.
It may not get you the first one. But if we're going to do cost estimates, just the top 5 instead of the top 25, And then that'll keep staff from doing a lot of work.
That 200,000 could go towards, you know, tying us over until we get some payment dollars.
Well, it depends on how it's scored because right now Beach Creek and then Fritzmar have had champions in the form of you and Commissioner Culpepper and Fritzmar in the form of Commissioner Lee and Commissioner Fisher. And now Head Street. So it depends on who's at the top and then how, so it may not tie us over. It may only partially get one and not those three. And then there's others that aren't being championed.
If I may share, so those two roads are great examples. We have seen them in the last year or so, talking about how much it costs from the resident to live on Beach Street and also from our elected officials making requests. So Fritz Mall wasn't the $200,000 road. The Beach Street wasn't the $500,000 road. But again, it all depends on the cul-de-sac, the right of way, how back we need to tie back to those driveways to make them ADA and things like that. It may reduce the cost on Beach Street, but I don't think it would be a project in the 200, unfortunately, in that 200,000. It's a little bit.
Drainage alone on Beach Street.
And especially if we decide to go all the way down to the end of that easement we have and we maintain that their portion on the slope. So it is not, unfortunately, not a cheap project. It's needed. We see it from maintenance perspective. We were there every time it rains with gravel, so it should, we see the need that it should be paved, so we're not there. It's a good idea every time.
I'll see you in 2 months.
Ms. David, 2 months, thank you so much.
Thank you for having me.
Motion to adjourn,
So, yeah. So moved.
okay?
That
Thank y'all so much.
Unless I'm hanging up on you now.
is, like, y'all get